Okay, looking at the level crossing, we can see both the minic track on one circuit and the train track on the other circuits cross, and of course never the two shall meet. On the rear we can see how that is achieved, with the railway track hopping over the minic track. And we can see obviously there must be some sort of insulator between the two. So first of all, as before, let's remove the old rubber off the minic track. Right, there we are, and we can see that we've got the same situation we have with a normal straight. So if we turn it over, we can see we have the little pinches. Let's remove the track. Now we can also see this time the insulators which keep the minic track separated from the railway track, little bits of black plastic which we mustn't lose. So let's just flip out all the track. And there we are. Now we can see in this particular instance we only have 3 of the 4 insulators, which means that we're missing one, and we need to make a spare part to make sure the tracks don't touch. And the other thing to consider at this point, if we're putting a railway system onto our minic layout, what sort of track are we going to use? This is the really old 60s Series 4 track, and you can see how tarnished it's actually got. The newer track, I think is about level 7, is nickel coated. So we can either clean up the old one and connect it with different types of fish plates, or we can remove them completely. It's entirely up to yourself. So for example, on this particular instance here, we can see that on this level crossing, one of these slides on, you can slide out the existing rail and replace it with your new rails. making sure that they contact underneath. Sometimes you'll find, and it's one of the instances I've had, is that the new rail obviously is a slightly different shape and it can be a bit loose, but a very, very small amount of epoxy resin should fix that nicely for you. And you can see here exactly why you need that insulator, so that the track doesn't come in and hit the minic circuit, because we don't want the circuit going like that. Okay, so as before, we clean up the strips. Okay, so we now have our minic track ready, but while we're at it, let's just check that the railway track is working fine. So we should get a circuit all the way from one side to the other, or not in this case. So we now know that somewhere along the line over the years the connection has completely eroded. We have one connection there. Turning over to the copper strips again, we can see that the contacts aren't working, so we need to remove the rail to have a look, see exactly what the position is underneath. And finally, with a little bit of perseverance and lifting up the contacts and cleaning the rails, we have a lovely circuit, and we just need to repeat that on the other side. Okay, we've made sure our circuits are working on our rail track, and it's time now just to pop back in our friends the minic track. Make sure the terminals on the back are open. Not quite lined up there. There we are, heard it click into place. Okay, so we have our minic track, and we made sure that the little indentations are lined up and the ends lined, so they're nice and flat. Now we need to reinsert these plastic parts. And if you remember before, we were one short. So what I've done is I've cut another one out of a milk bottle side, a normal 5-pinter, making sure that the cuts and the grooves are in the same place. It's a fraction thicker, but it will do the job. It's an insulating piece. So we line that up, pop that one in, that side. And we pop that one in that side. Next we make sure that they're all lined up, otherwise the train won't go down. So they look fine. Now we need to reinsert our track rubber. This is the last word, but I've been experimenting because the minic track rubber is quite expensive. It's about £1 a metre. Now I bought 2 meters of this neoprene rubber. It's 2 millimeters wide and 25 millimeters across. We need 2 millimeters, so I've been cutting off little strips the length of that, and I estimate that for £4.50 I can get 10 times as much out of the length. So instead of 2 meters I can get 20 meters. And here we are, here's our little rubber strips. So we pop them in as we did before, making sure that we get the glossy side to either side, pop them in, it's not the easiest thing to cut straight. Scissors I find is better than a knife because it tended to slip a little. Pop that in as before. Cut it off if I can find the scissors, or a knife even. Making sure that's gone in. Make sure the rubber's right down inside the track. Goes down with that satisfying feel. So next the finger test. We can see here the insulator has moved slightly, so just move that back. A good test now would be to make sure the train runs across and the car runs across, and of course that we have no contact between the rails and the minic track, because that would cause a short. Excellent, no problem. And repeat for the other side. Put everything together, and don't forget a final check every time to make sure there is no circuit between the rail and the road. Job's complete.